Welcome to the Gaudium et Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. This is the Gaudium et Spes podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gaudium et Spes podcast. Today, we are doing part 3 in a series on the corporal works of mercy. If you haven't already, check out our last episode where we had Deacon Ray on and we talked about sheltering the homeless. But today, we're focusing in on visiting the imprisoned. And Ches, we've got a great episode. We've got Bishop Bill along with Aida Bone, who is the director of the Office of Advocacy and Justice. And so I think, I think our folks that are listening in are going to really enjoy the podcast episode today.
Agreed. We get to work with them all the time. And we know kind of, especially with prison ministry, how detailed and difficult compared to other ministries, and but also how powerful the ministry is. So you'll hear amazing stories in this episode. Before we get to that, though, time to do some highs and lows. It's May, so it's graduation season again. Summer's right over the horizon. Anyhow, let's do the quote, and then we'll get in to see what's going on in our lives. So again, from Gaudium et Spes, paragraph 1, the joys, the hopes, griefs, and anxieties of the men of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted. These are the joys, the hopes, the griefs, and anxieties of the followers of Christ. An appropriate quote as we go into prison ministry especially.
For sure.
But yeah, what's going on in your life right now, Susan?
Yeah, so I know for the last 2 episodes I've mentioned about my son's graduation, and so we've passed that. It was a beautiful ceremony.
Oh,
it was
cool.
really, really nice to be a part of all of that and see all the graduates, there. And just a week ago, I was able to attend my nephew Henry's graduation from 8th grade at Sacred Heart School. So what a beautiful ceremony that was. I didn't realize that they now do salutatorian and valedictorian for 8th grade.
You gotta fit all the achievements.
Yeah.
For 8th graders.
I mean, the 2 young ladies that, were selected and, achieved those tremendous positions gave really motivating speeches.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, I was floored to see how great 8th graders are these days, because I know I probably would have been petrified standing up there having to give a speech, and they were funny, they were inspiring. So it's really heartwarming to see our youth and, all the great things that lie ahead for them. So.
Y'all, that was a great promo. Send your kids to our diocesan Catholic schools.
Absolutely.
If you have not heard about it yet, our Step Up for Students scholarship in the state of Florida is for every family, no matter how much money you make or how little money you make. It's an incredible opportunity, and it produces amazing young people just in 8th grade.
It does.
Not to mention our high schools. So, yeah, please send them our way. Well, that's awesome. We were also at, your sister Sherry, his son, and we were at some of the 8th grade festivities because my son's a 2nd grader and their buddies are the 8th graders, so they graduate. So there's a beautiful little ribbon pinning ceremony and stuff. Anyhow, hype for me right now, honestly, we're kind of post-dating this a little bit, but this weekend, as at the time of recording, May 18th, we have our diocesan young adult retreat, Rooted in Christ. There are 80 plus young adults from all across the diocese coming. Bishop Bill's going to be speaking, a couple other young adult speakers from across the diocese. It's going to be an awesome gathering. I'm super excited. Again, young adult ministry is so interesting. There's no sacramental carrot to come. Mm-hmm. They're just coming because they love the Lord. They want to encounter Him and be with one another in fellowship. So just a beautiful sign of health and vibrancy in our diocese. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Well, like you said, it is time to hand it over to our compatriots, our boss and our compatriot here in the Pastoral Center, Aida Bone, our Director of Advocacy and Justice, and Bishop Bill. We're not going to do a wrap-up on this because you'll see in the midst of their conversation, they do a fine job wrapping it on everything. But we will see you back here in 2 weeks' time as we continue our series on the Corporal Works of Mercy with our local St. Vincent de Paul Society representatives. So a lot of people are familiar. If there's one way to get involved in the Corporal Works of Mercy, a lot of people usually think, I should reach out to St. Vincent de Paul.
Definitely.
And they're right. And the one we're going to focus on, though, is particularly clothing the naked and all the work that St. Vincent de Paul does, especially with our homeless or underhoused populations, to make sure that they are clothed and properly cared for in that manner. So we'll see you on the other side of that.
Hello, everybody. I'm here with Aida Bone, Director of Advocacy and Justice for the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, or as she says, director of everything, pretty much. But today we want to talk about one of the corporal works of mercy, that is visiting the imprisoned. And, of all of the corporal works, and we know them from Matthew 25, Jesus said, I was hungry and you gave me food, I was thirsty and you gave me drink, etc. I think of all of them, this one could be the most challenging for people because it's easy to think about and do to feed someone who is hungry or console someone who is distressed or suffering. But for a lot of people, this is challenging, especially because those who are incarcerated have at least been accused and maybe even, and many of them are guilty of any crime. It could be a very heinous crime as well. And so we have to remember, of course, that we're not saying that it's good that someone has done something, of course, especially if it's bad. But we do recognize that they are children of God in the image and likeness of God who are in need, maybe especially in need of comfort and assistance. We know that Jesus paid attention to sinners, especially those who recognized that they had sinned and repented. Think about the prodigal son, or think about St. Dismas, the other thief on the cross next to Jesus. And he wasn't saying what you've done is good and it's fine, but he was recognizing their contrition then and was bringing about forgiveness in them. So, as I said, it doesn't mean approving what they've done. And as a matter of fact, our ministry to them, visiting people, praying with them, comforting them, giving them materials to read and to pray with, actually can assist with our efforts as a community to rehabilitate them and to bring them to a point of contrition, to deepen their own spiritual life. Okay, so we want to talk about how we got involved in the ministry, and then just about how you can get involved, perhaps. We're going to challenge you to consider participating in this important work of the church. So I'll just say something quickly and then pass it over to Aida. I know I talk a lot. How I got involved. I got involved in working with those who are incarcerated, frankly, because when I saw the list of options when I was in the seminary of ministries we could choose, I went right to the one that was most intimidating, even scared me. And that was at that time working with young people in a juvenile detention center. And it wasn't even a prison, a jail at that point. It was those who were, this was a sentencing, a diversion program. So instead of being sentenced, they could meet with people like me, and we could meet with them once a week and talk about just different things and try to get them, make sure they don't continue to do their crimes, which were things like shoplifting and things like that. So that was my entrance into this ministry, and I liked it a lot. And I thought, I don't know if I felt like I was making a difference, so that was good. Then later I did go to a juvenile detention center once a week, and I worked there for several hours, just really, again, talking to the young people and playing games with them, playing basketball, praying with them as well. I really liked it. And then when I was in the seminary, toward the end of my seminary experience, I chose something, again, that intimidated me a lot, going to a federal prison in California for a summer. So I was there 8 hours a day for 3 months, working there at FCI Dublin, and learned a lot, loved that ministry. And even then came back, and before ordination, or maybe after ordination, I went into the Indiana prisons and even to death row there. Again, I think I was initially, I started because it kind of was intimidating and I really wanted to challenge myself, but then I stay and I continue to do it because I really love that ministry, and I feel like not a lot of people want to do it, and so because I can do it, because I shouldn't say I enjoy it, but I guess I enjoy it, that it's a good thing and I should continue doing it. That's a lot. How about you, Aida? How did you get involved in this ministry?
Well, now that I think about it, I feel that God was preparing me along the way for this ministry. And like you, it's not a ministry that people get excited about. But, I did grow up in Los Angeles and, in a neighborhood where there were a lot of gang members, gang violence and drugs. And I was so scared of all of it. I wanted to distance myself as much as possible. But I went to school with these kids, so I got to see their gentle side or get to know them in art class and, and their great drawing skills. But so it allowed me to see kind of the different sides of people, but still very much afraid. And in fact, when I went to college, one of my professors used to be a probation officer, and he really wanted me to come and intern with him and, share about my own perspective, like growing up in this neighborhood with so many challenges and having a different outcome. And, I did the orientation and praying, and I got cold feet, Bishop. I decided not to do it, because there's fear, what are you going to walk into? And then, prior to my work here in the diocese, I was also working with an interfaith organization trying to reduce the number of youth arrests here in Escambia County. So just hearing the stories behind people that get arrested, especially young people, that get arrested, that, end up making a mistake without really a chance to change their life around, or hearing the different stories that contribute to the lifestyle that they might have, definitely poverty and, the lack of, when parents are busy and kids don't have supervision, who's taking care of them, and, just all these other circumstances that that lead to behavior like that. But I have to say, Bishop Wack, even, when I got offered this job, there was a lot of fear. And I kept delaying my starting date because I'm like, come on, God, just tell me you don't want me to do this. Send me a sign. He just kept reaffirming me, like, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. So, at some point you have to trust the Lord that whatever He puts on your plate, He'll give you the skills and the courage to do it. So
Amen. That's great. And so, and here in the diocese, you get to do the ministry, but a lot of it is you help facilitate that for other people. And so that's something we want to talk about as well, because a lot of people ask me, or they just say, I've always thought about doing that, but how do you even start? I don't know, can I go do that? And what do you do? What do I need to do? What steps do I need to take, for that? So, I mean, what if someone, I'll put you on the spot, if they call your office or call here, and say, I'm interested in doing prison ministry, what should we tell them?
Yeah, and you would be surprised how many times I get that call about someone that, just feels like God is calling them to this ministry. And, I always like to meet with them in person because I want to know their story and, what's kind of behind this call, because you have to realize not everyone, would be just kind of, where are they at? Like one time I got a call from someone who had been a victim of a crime and, was really praying for the person. And, just feeling like I was very angry, but now I'm starting to think about all the circumstances. And I feel like God is calling me to come and serve this person. And, how to you're not going to be able to go and serve in that prison, but, there's many other prisons where you could come and support other young people that, made the same mistake and may need guidance on how to get their life back into track. So I like to meet with them. I encourage them to go and meet with their priest to explore this. Is this a ministry where that would be good for me? Because, our priests know us and they know, where are we spiritually? Is this something, would this be something completely new? Like someone that's already a Eucharistic minister that already has that training and can come and bring you to a prison, it's great. And then, I think the difficult part is when you start going over the long steps of getting to that point, because sometimes people have that excitement, they want to do it. And then you have to be realistic and say, yeah, it's going to take a long time. So how do you not let that momentum and that energy, die out? Then you have to figure out, what is a prison in my area where I can visit? Do I want to go to a county jail? Do I want to go to a state or the federal? And for each of those, the process is different. So kind of walking them through it. And a few times I feel like I have overwhelmed people with too much information at the beginning. So I think I have learned to, let's first explore if this is something that you want to do. Sometimes I recommend doing a formation training before they even start, so they can we're partnering with a Catholic Prison Ministry Coalition, and they have a great training on what does it really mean to be a minister in prison. What are we doing there, and what are we not doing there? We're not social workers, we're not attorneys. As Catholics, it's so easy to want to get involved in their lives, and that's we have to be cautious. So I recommend it really depends on people, but then ultimately I do have to give them the step-by-step. Here's where you fill out the application, then you're going to do your fingerprints, and then we have to call 1,000,000 times to be able to get your PIN number, and you have to do this every so often. So
yeah, we were talking before, and you said that people need patience to do this ministry. We have, like you said, people feel excited, like I'm going to go in there, I want to visit people, I want to make a difference. Great, okay, but there's, it's the government, so you have to fill out a lot of paperwork, you have to go through background checks and screening, and you kind of hinted to this, or you said, they'll ask you, do you know someone in prison, especially, or who's incarcerated anywhere? I had a family member who was in prison, and so I had to write that down, and I couldn't minister there at that prison where she was, but I could visit as a family member. But things like that, and also then just to be patient with the time coming back, and like you said, fingerprinting and all of that. And even when we go to a prison, you may drive an hour or hour and a half, because a lot of these prisons and jails are in rural areas. Yes. We have how many in this diocese? We have 42 institutions, county, state, and federal institutions, and city. So that's amazing. But so sometimes you have to drive. Anyway, you get there, and then who knows? Maybe there might be an incident there, a lockdown or something, so you can't go in, and you have to go home and come back again later. So it takes a lot of patience, but it gives us a tiny glimpse, though, of what our brothers and sisters go through in the system, too, because they're always doing things like that, or there's lockdowns, or they're told they can't go to chapel today, or they can't do this, or they wake up, just different things like that. So a lot of patience is needed. And I would say also, and you hinted to this, sorry, and then I'll turn it back to you, that whenever we do any ministry, we need to be open. We can't just say, I want to do ministry and I want to do it in this way. It's kind of like we should approach the parish team or the pastor and say, what's needed? I'd like to get involved. I see it in the bulletin. I hear people talking about it. What can I do? And it might be, we really need people now to support, to bring food to the team who's going to give a retreat or something, and be outside the prison, but prepare the food and bring it to the gates, and then they'll take it in or something like that. And you think, well, wait, but I want to be there one-on-one with people. Yeah, but that's what we really need. And can you start there? And then maybe move to another ministry. Yeah.
I wanted to kind of. You were talking about the challenges just getting there, and it really feels like a pilgrimage. Like you're getting there, you're going to take the long road, and it's going to be painful and hot, and you're going to be in line waiting to be searched and go through security and lots of waiting and all those things. It really feels that way, which is why I always encourage people to do this, in a team. This is a ministry that can be very isolating. We have we have one person, two people from the prison that might go and visit on different days. So I would love, if we could have teams, people that are doing that pilgrimage together, so that it's not that way, and that, but just the results. I tell people, everyone that I hear was scared to do prison, but everyone that has tried it is transformed. I love, one of my favorite parts of the job is to get to hear volunteers about stories. They're like, they'll call and this is what's going wrong with the chaplain, or, we're having an issue with the warden. But I always want to hear about, how are you being transformed? Like, tell me about the stories. And because that also feeds me spiritually to know that, okay, this work has, we're doing something good, and other people need to hear the stories as well. So I like to remind volunteers that as much as we can focus on the challenges, that we have to remember the good stories as well, because there's many in prison ministry.
Well, let's talk about some of those. I think that's good for people to hear too. What are some stories? What are some examples, things we've learned or things. I'm just thinking. So now, as a bishop, as a priest, I get to go to a lot of our institutions just to celebrate, not just, but to celebrate Mass. And as bishop, to confirm people, which is really awesome. I just did that a few days ago. I was in one of our prison in one of our in our diocese, and I think it was 6 men. I confirmed them and baptized 2 others and confirmed them too, so 8. And it was just the look on their face when I got to confirm them. They had been waiting for that. They'd been studying and preparing and reading for days and days and days and weeks. And finally, they're there, receiving the Holy Spirit. And I'll never forget the look. And I get this, frankly, with the young people. Last night, I was at 2 churches, and I got to do confirmations for them, celebrate confirmation for them. And I get that look, too, most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. Just they're locked in. And it's the same for our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated when they receive the Eucharist or confirmation or another sacrament. And that feeds me as well. I love that. So do you have any experience of stories about that?
Well, I think one of the earliest stories that I heard from our volunteers, I met with this person and I asked, tell me a story, why do you keep doing this ministry? And she shared about, I see miracles happen every day. Sometimes I pray with someone and they might tell me, I'm having issues with my mom and I don't want to talk to her anymore. And they prayed together. And then, she shared when I came back, she shared, I have good news for you. I called my mom and, I apologize and we're talking now. And this is amazing. It's like the healing of the family from inside prisons. But also, more recently at the retreat at Jefferson, I remember when you were celebrating Mass and when you ask people, what are some things that you would like us to pray for? And sometimes it's so awkward, you'll say that and I'm always scared to say it out loud.
Sure.
But it just kept going on and on and on. And they had so many prayer requests, for my daughter, for my family, and it was amazing to feel that in a setting where you would feel that it's difficult to be vulnerable, to see the men being comfortable to share about their pains and worries in that setting.
But it's one thing they have is time. They have a lot of time, and I'm not being coy. They even joke about that. They're like, I got a lot of time on my hands. So they take their faith seriously, many of them, and they read the Bible and read it and read it. So one man was just saying recently, I've read the Bible probably, 8 times, and then I was looking for something else, and your volunteers gave me the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the thick book. So I read that a couple times. And then, and I pray every day, the Liturgy of the Hours and everything. And this person even said, then I got a missal, that is used in church. And so I kind of pray the Mass every day. And I said, all right, I'm going to stop you right there. That's probably not the best thing to do, but you can access it, but you're not, you're not standing in the place of a priest. He knew that, but he wants to absorb so much, and he's just reading and praying and diving into the faith so much. He says, what else can you give me? Is there any other teachings on the church? So we're going to offer videos, I believe, to some of the folks who are incarcerated right now. A lot of them have, there's so much we could say. Because of the restrictions in many places, a lot of institutions are issuing tablets to those who are incarcerated. And so that's good because now they have access to more material, especially religious. But it's I say bad or whatever because one of the reasons is because they want to limit contact with outsiders, with visitors, and I think they need that. We all need human contact. But let's go with the blessing. The blessing is many of them have access to tablets or they can check them out, and then we can put content on there teaching about the sacraments, about the church, things like that. They're just hungry for that.
Yeah, that has been exciting to think about. Wow, could we expand the access to materials? They're so hungry. There's platforms where they can take a course on their faith, and to be able to challenge us. How do we take faith formation inside the prison walls? So it's been an exciting development. And, there's many other dioceses that are already doing this effectively. So how do we learn from them? How do we encourage our brothers in this diocese that feel called to that, to do RCIA or develop materials to be able to bring that knowledge into the prisons. But, one thing I also wanted to share is that I love the model here in our diocese, the fact that we really treat prison ministry as, as an extension of your parish. It's not something different. It's not extracurricular. If you're a parish and there happens to be a prison in your boundaries, like that's part of your family. That's part of your, those are your sheep.
Yeah,
like how do we actively try to find ways and reflect on how much are we doing already at the parish, and can we move some of that programming to the prison? It's not that way in other dioceses. In other dioceses, sometimes there's 2 priests assigned and 5 deacons, and they're the ones tasked with this ministry. But I really feel that giving people the opportunity to take part of this, it's great. I mean, it's when you wrote your letter about sharing the gift and how we need to be more comfortable about going out there and sharing our story and spreading the gospel, prison ministry really, to me, it was like, wow, this is the perfect setting to get people comfortable to go out there and, be open to being evangelized as well. Because like you said, sometimes our brothers and sisters that are there know a lot, and we can learn from them as well.
They do, yes. It's you mentioned about remembering that they're part of our diocese, our parish. A lot of letters that I get are from the men and women who say, we haven't had a visitor, haven't had a chaplain come by in a year or 2 or 3 or ever, and they're very passionate, and they cut to my heart because they say, Bishop, I'm your sheep as well. We're dying in here, we need confession, we need the Eucharist. So then what I do is I can write to the pastors in that area and just say, hey, we've got to pay attention to this prison, and hopefully that'll get going there, But yeah, they have that sense that not only are they figuratively cut off, they're really, literally cut off from community, and they feel that, and they know that they've done wrong, and they feel that, they remember it every day. What they really need is to know they're not alone. They have not been forgotten by God or by the community as well. And that's something that we can and should and must offer to our brothers and sisters.
Yeah. You're right. Getting those letters is difficult. And actually this week I received a letter from one of our prisons where we have not had, services in a long time. And, it was so powerful to say, thank you. We finally have Mass, and to be like, wow, it took so long, and finally they get to come and to Mass. So,
I mean, for us, we may not think of it because we can go to Mass every day if we want. Most of us, it's pretty accessible, and reconciliation as well. But yeah, it was 2 Easters ago that I got to go to first a women's prison and then a men's on the same grounds there, and celebrated Mass with both of them. It had been a couple of years since they had celebrated Mass, and I remember just how happy they were. I mean, I walked in and they just applauded. There's probably about 60 women and then about 80 men in their chapel. And while I remember distributing communion, we had a choir for the women. The men had a choir as well, but the women were singing, a hymn and everything. And then all of a sudden it got kind of quiet, and I'm still giving out communion. I look over, I thought, did they just run out of words? But I realized what was happening. They were all emotional, and they were crying just because they were receiving the Eucharist on Easter. It had been 3 years, and they just felt that presence of God, through the Eucharist. And it was just an awesome moment.
Wow.
And went into then I said goodbye to them. I could only be there for about an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 15. Then I went over to the men, and they were just so happy. You could see them. They were actually going toward the chapel because there had been signs put up that I was coming for the Mass. And so there's a big group of people, and we got in, and they were just very excited to have Mass, to celebrate Mass. And so it's a good reminder for me that they're there every day. And I'm not saying that we should go every day, or that we all need to, go even weekly or something. But if all of us do something, just go occasionally, then we could really be making a difference in their lives and in the life of our diocese, frankly. Because as you said, it's not just us doing this ministry for them. We're learning, we're growing, we're meeting Christ in another person, and that's that's why he said, I was in prison and you visited me hungry and you gave me food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, we mentioned, you said something about the retreat. Can you tell us about that? That's kind of a unique offering in this diocese. It was a couple of months ago that we offered this Colby retreat. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we had a few. So the one that I was talking about was Jefferson, and so we had about 100 men there, and we were surprised that they opened up this opportunity to everyone, even if they were not Catholic, and we were a little nervous. I remember having because the whole agenda was very Catholic. We're going to pray the rosary, we're going to go to Mass, and they had asked you to do the liturgy of Our Lady of Guadalupe's feast. Right. Yeah. And then they said, we're going to have some non-Catholics join. And we're like, wow, how are you going to do that? Mm-hmm. And, it was great. I mean, they prayed the rosary. They stayed engaged the whole time. And that was a wonderful. And, in that prison, Jefferson, we have a great model. It's two couples that really come and minister as a team. We have Mass, but also being able to come and have that team of couples coming and sharing the faith, in places where many of them have, broken families, they have issues. So it's a great way to come and share that story. And then the Colby Prison Ministry has also been great. So for those of you that maybe have been to an Acts retreat in our diocese, some of our parishes have these very regularly. We were able to host a few at Century for men. And, this was the first retreat in our diocese, Catholic retreat. So it took a lot of time to be able to get the permission, but it has been amazing. So many people that decided to get involved. There's always people that are afraid to go and commit to the ministry. I'm going to go by myself. But coming as a team, it really takes about, 40 people to put on one of these retreats. There's an inside team, so 20 men, because their goal is to have a lot of one-on-one conversations. And then you have an outside team who's making the food and making sure that they get a homemade meal. And so there's so many ways to contribute. So, our leaders here were able to put on this men's retreat. And now there's a group of women that are like, we got to do this in a women's prison as well. So we're exploring that, and the excitement has been great, to be able to say, we're going to do this. And, people are saying, yes, we'll drive the 2-3 hours to go there. But also realize that we can't just do the retreat. That has to be the beginning. There has to be something constant. And that's a great way to get people exposed to the ministry, and then hopefully they'll receive a call to continue helping. But it's been really exciting, and it's stories like that, about the letters and people that are like, please, we want to have Mass, we want to read the Bible, that really kind of got this whole conversation started. So.
And I love that you're so excited about it. That's really great. Thank you for that. Thank you for all that you do and for encouraging people and helping them through this process to visit our brothers and sisters as well. We've been talking about, masses, sacraments, retreats. What about people who, there are some I know who say, okay, that's great. I'm so glad we're doing that. I don't feel called to, or I can't because maybe they're shut in, or they're just not physically able to go visit a prison, or not. It's not something they're comfortable with. What can they do? Is there something that people in our parishes, our diocese can do?
Yeah, I would say that there's many things you can do. I would say definitely you can support some of these efforts for the retreats. It does take a lot of resources to put on the retreats, for the supplies, so you can make a donation to Colby Prison Ministry so that they can use those resources for the next retreat. They can also, help to fund or make a donation to Joseph House. That's the other side of this work. Once they get out of prison, what happens? They're going to need all these resources. They're going to need a place to stay. And while Joseph House may not be able to provide housing, there's a lot of resources and guidance that they can provide even before the men get out and get out of prison. So make a contribution. You can also donate to our ministry, because those are the resources that we use to buy supplies, Bibles, rosaries. And now, since the ministry is growing, they're asking, it used to be when I started here 3 years ago, like we need Bibles and rosaries. And now they're doing book studies and all these other things. And, they don't always have the resources, especially in some of our smaller parishes, to be able to support that. So definitely reach out if you are feeling called to help in this ministry. There's a place for everyone.
Great. And absolutely. And pray. They can pray for the teams, for the people going into the institutions, but also pray for our brothers and sisters there. That's that's another way that we can assure them that they're not alone. They're not forgotten. You're being prayed for, And there's one other thing. People ask, can I write letters? Can I write an inmate, And that's good, but I would just caution you and say, go through, a ministry perhaps that's doing that, or maybe through here, because, there's all kinds of concerns. They don't want, you to, certainly we don't want you to give out personal information about where you live, about family, things like that. So it's nice to kind of go through another agency, and you certainly never want to promise someone that you'll take a message to someone. You can't, that's illegal, or, send anything to someone. And so just to get away from that, it's nice to go through another agency or ministry that, may be able to look at what you write and what they're writing to you, and kind of, use their address, etc. But
someone like Dismas Ministry, they have a really great pen pal program where you sign up, and, they'll pair you with someone that may have, that they might think would have similar interest. But also one of our parishes here, Holy Spirit, that's kind of how they got started. They said, we don't really have a person assigned to our parish, but we have been, getting this call. And they started with letters, and we did a training. We wrote these letters with lots of mistakes about things you're not supposed to do, and they had to read them. Be like, we tell them, don't share your personal information, don't tell them you're super rich and you have all these resources, and they got to do that, kind of to hear all the don't do this. And they have a team of people that read the letters before they're mailed out. So they have a great format, and I think that every other parish that would want to implement something similar, more in-house, they would be definitely willing to train and share what worked well and what are some lessons learned, because we always learn something from making mistakes.
Amen. Good. Thank you very much. That's great. I'm so proud of all the ministry that is being done in our diocese. I talk to my brother bishops, and some of them will say, we have 4 institutions in our diocese, so it's a lot. What about you? And I say, 42, yes. Actually. We have a lot. We and St. Augustine, the diocese there, has we share the bulk of all the institutions in Florida up here in the north. And so there's a great need, and I'm just really proud that so many people are involved in this ministry. Especially you. Thank you, Aida, for your enthusiasm and your expertise and your care for our brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you to all the clergy and deacons that, are there every month as well. Yeah.
Great.
And help train you volunteers as well.
Okay. Well, God bless you all, and thank you for your interest in this ministry. As I said, I shouldn't say at the least, but at the most, pray for us. Pray for all those who are engaged in this ministry and our brothers and sisters who are in need of this important ministry in our church.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you would like to know more about our podcast, please visit our website, gaudiumετspes.net, or go to ptdiocese.org and click the button that says podcast. If you listen to the audio version from an app such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe or leave us a comment there as well. Thank you for joining us.